like August.
Juice Aleem is a leader and Black futurist founder of an inspiring, immersive art educational experience that is called AfroFlux.
It's funny you introduced me as futurist. I'm partly old school, partly ahead of the curve. So I don't do everything on my phone, and some things I prefer on laptop, some things I don't do at all. So it takes me
Wow.
time
Yeah.
to link and sync, you know?
Afrofuturism is all eras right now, so we're taking different parts of different times, different technologies.
Yeah, true. I mean, you're talking to someone who I was reminiscing of a little bit beyond 10 years ago. I intentionally didn't have a credit card, phone, this, that, watching the
Wow.
satellites tracking me,
Yeah.
Um, but in the end, like, you can't survive like that right about now. Or at least
Yeah.
it's very hard to.
Yeah. So you
Yeah.
went off the grid for a while.
Went off the grid in the country that has the most CCTV cameras per square mile in the world. Yeah.
Did it feel like there was a disconnect? Like you learned a lot when you came back? Or was it like, oh snap?
I I go in waves. Like I say, I'm part-time at the end of all periods of time,
Love it.
part-time Luddite, part-time in the bush.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like you just said,
Yeah.
it's you kind of pick and choose, and when you understand at least the concept of a multiverse or multiplicity. Yeah, I'm a 16th century corsair warrior here. I'm a 24th century
No,
herbsman,
totally.
and
Totally.
so I pretend it, but I also live it as well at the same time. You know.
I like and I don't like it in the sense that you're basically saying you can't quite escape from it, but then at the same time, that futurism is also your escape because then you can take these concepts of now and apply them to any era you want. That's so liberating.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
having all these conversations now, people are accusing people of all type of fake blackness and fake this and fake wokeness and fake this. I'm like, one of the most important groups for me culturally. There was loads of groups, loads of reggae groups, loads of hip hop groups, but specifically in a physical aesthetic was X Clan. And I don't know if you know X Clan or if you remember X Clan. They were very important for me because that's how I always felt, like just X being the unknown.
Nice.
You know, people from Africa who know
Yeah.
their direct cultures, they'll always go, oh, you look like these people back home. You look like the people from the mountains or from the village. I'm like, yeah, cool. I want to be that. We all
I
want to
want to
be
be.
Egypt. We all want to be Nubians. We want to be the cool
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We want
I
to be
hear
the
that.
cool people. We don't want to accept parts in the bad sides, who had so many slaves, who had concubines, this many wives, this many. We don't want to get into that. My people from the Caribbean, different parts of the Caribbean. I still don't even know that. Where are you from? Where are people from?
I just found out that my people are like, I'm half Nigerian basically. And then the rest is like scattered throughout the diaspora, Mali, and then
Right.
like Tennessee, like southeastern United States. So right on to the Caribbean because it's amazing down there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm finding out. My father passed away quite a while ago,
I'm
and my mother
sorry.
passed away. Thank you. My mum's from Jamaica. My dad was from St. Kitts, but both of them had other backgrounds within that, So
Okay.
even the idea when people say, "Oh, I'm dual heritage" or "I'm biracial," it's like, what does that mean? Like, everyone's dual heritage.
That's a good point.
Everyone's parents come, even if you're from the same city, someone comes from the north, someone comes from the south. It's two different heritages. So when my mum passed, certain things came to light that we'd always heard. Well, I thought it was maybe some BS, but I'm part Cuban. People move, people intermarry, people change, and people drift, and it leads back to that X. I don't know how Ashanti I am, or how Yoruba I am, or how Twi, or Fulani. Maybe I'm one of those people that was maybe I've got 8% Zulu, or So
Yeah.
I've never done the DNA test.
Okay.
I don't think I'm going to do one. You
I
know,
respect that.
and I mean that on cultural levels. I mean that on
I respect
historic
that.
levels, and you know, I mean that in every way, form. You know, I wasn't born in Zaire. I wasn't born in the Congo. I was born in Birmingham in the UK, and I know that I'm not from here, but I am obviously from here, and that in itself is, you know, is an Afrofuturist future and history right here.
There you go. There you go. What you just said, Juice, my homie, is that dual identity is literally that double consciousness that W.E.B. Du Bois was talking about, in which like you remember your roots, but you're also firmly rooted where you are. So
Yeah,
you kind of it's kind of like you have to let go, but you're also reminiscent at the same
yeah,
time. Yeah. So now you're in Birmingham, and that's awesome. You know, like now you have that Birmingham sound, and you have been there for the rise of the UK like hip hop in the '90s. Tell us about that.
yeah. Most definitely. What can I say? It was amazing. It was eye-opening, brilliant, and for moments in time, you realize that there were moments in time where we thought we're going to be recognized, because you know everyone wants to be recognized by the mecca of hip hop,
Yeah.
New York.
Yeah.
So and so used that sample after one of our legends did it. So fast tongue twisting style like
Yes.
Pato Banton and Daddy Freddie have
Yeah.
been doing for years. We're going to get our credit. No, 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 no. So it's always weird. This again, it's one of those things that makes you realize you have to just continue with what you're doing. And that was the best British stuff. It just did its own thing. It wasn't trying to be New
Yeah.
York. It wasn't trying to be Kingston. It wasn't trying to be
Yeah.
Mississippi, Atlanta, LA. It wasn't even trying to be London, Bristol, or Manchester. It was just being.
Just it.
Folks like Tricky. It was just it. Tricky, Massive Attack, MC Mello. Though you can tell where they're from, it could blend into so many different places. I mean, Dizzy Rascal's a good example of that as well.
So cool.
Like a lot of West African kids growing up in Britain, they've had to mold themselves into the dominant African Caribbean culture of language
Right.
and stylistically, musically.
Yeah.
People can't tell, they can't. But Dizzy never, at least to my ears, he never sounded like he was pretending to be Jamaican. He didn't sound like he was pretending to be American. He just sounded
Right
like
on.
Dizzy Rascal.
Right on.
That's a beautiful thing. That's a very beautiful thing.
What other artists stand out in that genre to you? And before we get into it, let me just say we're always vibing to the UK sound. We were just obsessed with New York at the time. Like, trust that I was listening to like Roots Manuva. Like, I was listening to Gorillaz, like Damon Albarn, all of that, you know. But it was interwoven with the dominant scene at the time, which is New York hip hop, you know, like Tribe Called Quest and Raekwon. Definitely props to like the UK hip hop scene because it was different and it was not trying to be anything else than just straight art. And it achieved that. It really did. I still listen to like the Ninja Tune of like the late 90s.
How involved were you in that? How, in that movement, in that scene, in that listening to? Was it just a few CDs, or was it like a big thing in your life?
It was big. It was different artists, I think, that brought me to it. And I did hear you back in the day. I did when Juice Aleem came out. I was about it, okay. And then it was Andrea Triana.
Right. Yeah, yeah. I don't know if she still is, but her first lot of stuff came on Ninja,
Yeah.
and I think that's how she had that connection with Fly Low. So a lot of their stuff is now, I think it's put through Ninja anyway. A lot of their output basically. So there's been a connection. You know, there's been a deep connection for a while.
I like that. I like that through each other, there was a mutual appreciation for the art form of what Ninja Tune was doing, electronic, hip hop, you know, like soul, like different multi-genre sounds, right? And then on the west coast of America, there's Flying Lotus doing very much the same thing, just more American you know, like LA sounds. That's so cool.
Yeah, yeah. Rasty as well, doing the sort of roots and dub kind of version of electronic hip hop as well. You know, rest in peace to him. But what's interesting as well though is I didn't see it at the time, but the ninja sound is it's very white though as well. So that's why Big Dada was the sort of more hip hop arm of things. So at least here, I don't know how it was listening to it from the US, but here it's very white, student, middle class. And there was a moment where there was a takeover. You know, Britain's always about takeovers. Every year is another sound. You can be left out. You can be in the rave, go into the rave, and it's two-step rave, and by the time you leave, someone's calling it garage, and you're like, "What? Have I missed the whole cultural movement?" It's like in the same evening, jump up, dark wave, dubstep. It comes at you like thick and fast, and some waves work with each other, and some waves try and take over. So there was a moment when what they called trip hop it was really cool, but it started to overtake and it became rap without the lyrics, rap,
Okay.
like hip hop without the black folks, you know? So it was interesting coming into that dynamic in all the cool guys, but I don't think they even realize, you know, like part of any privilege, but part of white privilege is ignorance. You don't know that you're doing this thing, doing stuff to other, but you're not always aware. It's not always intentional. And I don't think most of them hadn't cut down to like, we're taking vital elements out of, we're taking that sound system culture, the MC side out of it.
That's extremely interesting in that a lot of your colleagues, people that you made music with, people on the same label as you didn't even realize they were gentrifying a genre. They had no idea because to them they were just making music, right? But then at the same time, gentrifying a sound, you know? So you have to be conscious of that every single time that you're in a space. Am I using this art form in the way it's intended? Is my presence needed? Yeah.
Well, yeah, am I needed?
Yeah. Are you taking that spotlight, and that's what you're saying, away from an artist that deserves that more? That's a good point too. And a lot of it comes from that Jamaican like do-it-yourself space of sound system of like, you didn't have access to the same stuff, you know, so you have to appreciate the roots of where it came from.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that was something that would often get taken out, the Jamaican. Even when hip hop came here, it was part of dance music at first. It used to be in dance music magazines.
Okay.
Even when people talk about electronica, well, they mean people that are using knobs, you know, the buttons, kind of crazy machines and wires, delays, relays. Well, what was Mad Professor doing and Lee Scratch Perry?
Lee Scratch.
That's electronica, but they never put him in the, okay, we talk about Stockhausen and things like that lineage. We talk about Kraftwerk and people like that. But not everybody puts Lee Scratch Perry in the same lineage, and he definitely is in that. I'm not saying the sound is the same, but he's an electronic artist as much as he's a dub artist and a reggae artist and a producer and an MC and a cultural icon, you know, super important.
Without Lee Scratch and without I think that bridge between Caribbean music and electronica, you wouldn't have garage or grime, like period. It would not be here. That's the foundation of garage, grime, and current hip hop scene in the UK is this, you know, this Caribbean electronic sound, Skepta and Dizzy, some of the later stuff that Gorillaz did too, and you.
Yeah, well, thank you for putting me in that gang. Yeah, it's interesting now though, because the African side's coming back in an electronic way as well.
Yeah, sure.
So me growing up, London was all a lot more Africans, even though Jamaicans and Caribbeans were the cultural dominance in the like 60s, 70s, 80s. It was Jamaican, Trinidadian. If they were black, they were Bajan, mostly Jamaican, but they were from those English Caribbean islands, you know. And you'd get the odd person from a French-speaking island or somewhere else. But seeing the dominance now of what they call Afro beats, which has elements of the old Zouk music and elements of Fela and, you know, Tony Allen and all those guys.
Mm.
And then you've got the gonk music as well from Southern Africa.
That's right.
It's changing things up as well now. So it's always been very Caribbean. Probably 90% of my black music listening, even my hip hop, was always an element of Caribbeanness, whether it was KRS, whether it was the Jungle Brothers and their attire and their kind of yardman vibes. It was even Capadonna doing these little dances, you know?
Yes!
I'm not going to say it's necessarily as...
I like that.
It's not the route for everybody, but it was the route for me listening. The similarities between Yellow Man or Shinehead.
Yes.
You know Shinehead?
Yeah.
And then even how Slick Rick came out.
Yeah.
So he naturally had this kind of yard swagger, but with London, but he's in New York. So he was doing, you know, the Wallabies and Kangol hats and you know, it's like, oh, my dad wears them too, you know, like, but then Big Daddy Kane's wearing them as well, you know.
Conversation with each other, they saw each other's flow and each other's getting back to their roots, and they're like, I like that. Let's all do that together. And it was the golden age of hip hop from there.
Yeah. I was just thinking of that lyric that Bismarck, he said he could, talking about Kane, he said he wore a Rasta type Kangol tilted to the side. Yeah.
I love that. Is that your personal journey till this point? Is that how you got into music now?
Pretty much. I mean, this is something I've said before. I was always rapping and singing at school prior to even really knowing what rap was, or it wasn't like I was trying to copy the Cold Crush Brothers or something. You know, whatever pop songs were out, I would make up my own versions. Wow, the sun's really come out there. Yes. You know, change the words and make it into something naughty, you know, like a little schoolboy thing or something about me. So, and also the music as well, going into golden era, even for us as well. I don't know how it was for you guys, but some of the first rap records I ever heard were pop records that had rap in, that people who were already making that transatlantic bridge happening, like Adam and the Ant, and from this side, who'd already gone over to New York and gone to the cool clubs, you know, the cool downtown clubs and uptown clubs. And then you had Blondie coming that way with Malcolm McLaren, and, you know, it was already outside of black and brown kids in the hood. It was already, by the time I heard it, even though it existed 10, 15 years before, by the time we're hearing it, it's the Tom Tom Club, it's new wave, it's post-punk, it's new romantic. So some of the first rap I really heard was, other than Sugar Hill Gang and stuff like that, that was on the radio. Yeah, it was Wham. You know, George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley.
Yeah. Whichever.
Wham, bam, I am the man. You know, so, but I was fortunate that family in the States, like brothers and cousins, would pass the tapes back, the news for the Caribbean community in New York, to tell them that, oh, there was a tornado in whatever, in Montserrat, or there was this in Jamaica, or so-and-so's passed away in, because my aunt and everybody, a lot of my family was in like Queens. And we'd get these tapes with all the information on this, you know, obviously pre-internet, pre-even phoning people that regular. So people used to have these really interesting ways of connecting with each other, really utilizing the technology. And tapes would get sent back. And if anyone went home or that person, you wouldn't take clothes that much. You'd take everything back before you could get coconuts over here easy, and mangoes and guinea. And sometimes you'd bring tapes and you'd hope that you had a sound tape. and these tapes that have information from New York for people in the from a Caribbean background. And on the end, after that show, sometimes I'd have, on a 90-minute tape, I'd have like 10 minutes to half an hour of hip hop. Because the show that came on after would be like a community show, community radio, and then they was playing some of these, I want to say early to mid 80s hip hop stuff. And so at the end of the Caribbean stuff, they're playing the soca and calypso, I'd get hip hop from New York as well. Stetsasonic and stuff like that, you know. A lot of them have got a Caribbean background. Yeah, there was this really mad thing happening. But that is my background, and then trying my own versions of it, and then eventually becoming more serious with it as well.
Yeah, I had the sense that you were evolving into this proud Afro-Caribbean heritage, like through music though, and through art. I like read the about section for AfroFlux because you said to steer the craft, our hands will need to get dirty. That is something that a revolutionary from the Caribbean would say. That's in Stokely Carmichael, Marcus Garvey, like rhetoric, as in revolution in art, blackness is praxis that you have to wade into. And you have to do work to find out who you are.
Most def. It's interesting that people want to make it just a look, you know, and it is a look as well, but they want to make it just the words. And it's interesting now, decades later, people are using the words of Audre Lorde and bell hooks and stuff, but just these little snippets, like you just discovered, you think she just popped out of thin air yesterday. Like, what's okay, cool that you're quoting it. But do you know, even I see, you know, Black Lives Matter there, but like people have took out Garvey they've pulled the Garvey rug from under ourselves, you know, and we're still tumbling, trying to find roots. People have already done the work. You know, we just need to carry that on. We don't need to find, it's good that we've got new phrases and new titles and new ideas, new perspectives. That's great. But nation building, collectivism, creativity, economics, regardless to what you think of those people as individuals, of course they're flawed. They were people of their time. So we can say, oh, Elijah Muhammad had kids here and he did this. But you've never seen people build restaurants, laundrettes, bakeries, protection, drug programs. This is the other thing as well. No one's got the key. Caribbeans have a certain way of doing things. Africans have a certain way of doing things. People from the US have a certain way of doing things. And everyone thinks, oh, maybe US people lead the way. They do in certain ways, but only because USA leads the way. Yeah. So that's a trickle down of a form of colonialism. Yes. You know, no offense to you or anybody else, but it's a form of colonialism. Just to assume that this is the only type of blackness, or it's the way, or, you know, oh, we're black and they're Brazilian. But, you know, as we know, just as many people went to Brazil from off of ships and boats and out of captivity. What are they doing? Who's their cool hook?
The conversation between us, like diasporically, is amazing. And I do find that the US, because of the history of colonialism and the relationship between the rest of the world and how it's imperialist to the point that it's us and then people are influenced by us and then they mirror the culture that we have, you know? A matter of when you talk to people about like Black American culture and just like in general American culture, you should be aware that that's the framework. Yeah.
Even as people say, someone might say, a Black person from the USA might go, I'm American, he's Mexican, or she's, no, Mexico is also America. Mexico is North America, and people forget that. It's not even south. People think, oh, it's south of the border. Yeah, but it's in North America. That's North America. Just like Canada, you know, Argentina is America.
Thank you.
Venezuela is America, you know. And that is some white dude somewhere said, this is this, and we're going to call that the Americas. We're going to call that this. that's the line. There was once upon a time, a Mason-Dixon line. There was once upon a time this line and that.
Exactly.
It's all arbitrary, like
borders and all these concepts of division and keeping each other away from unity and solidarity. But solidarity is realizing that your neighbor is only different because of like life circumstances.
You know, I mean, Haiti and the Dominican Republic should show the whole Black and brown world what's up on the same island. You know, it's like, and people will kill each other for, and some people will swear down, look exactly like me, and they're not Black. And then someone will swear down they're not this and they're not that, and you know, it's incredible.
It is incredible that it's not even like a logical self-preservation, but you feel like if you distance your Blackness that you'll be safe. Does that make sense? But you're not. You have to stand in it. You have to be proud of it, you know, because it's not going to save you to like say that you're not negro. You are negro. Be proud of it.
Negro. Yo soy negro. Yeah, I mean, we also have to be always continually mindful that even the type of Blackness we're talking about, the social and political Blackness, is a reaction to white supremacy. We have to be mindful of that. It's not when we were in this idyllic, once upon a time place, wherever we came from, on the shores of Africa, of the African coast, of different countries and different places, we weren't defining ourselves as necessarily as Black. We were more than likely defining ourselves by our area, our ethnicity, culture, background. You know, people in the ancient world, as we know, until the advent of whiteness, you'd be more quantified by your skill set, where you were from. Me, I might be the Abyssinian herdsman, or or you know, someone could be a Scythian blacksmith, or a Nubian. You know what I'm saying? Like exactly. That was what would define you.
Yes.
And it wasn't about whether you were Black, brown, white, or red. Someone would describe you later and say, yeah, he was tall, he was dark skinned, or she was light skinned and she was like this. But that wasn't our first and foremost. So the other thing is, well, a lot of my Blackness, as I've grown, or at least as I've matured, let me say, it's a cosmic Blackness. It's my kinship, not just with people on Earth who look somewhat similar to me as a phenotype. It's my kinship with the universe. It's my kinship with the womb of the universe. Intelligent Hoodlum had a lyric, and he says, "Black, the shade of the solar system." Wow. You know, that's the Blackness I'm living in. That's what I'm permeating. You know, there are galaxies and there are clouds, giant galactic clouds, millions and millions of miles away, and they're black. They're jet black, and they're filled with carbon and melanin. Yeah. I'm with them. Them are my homeboys. You know what I mean? Those are my people. Get me?
Like, that's not mumbo jumbo at all. That is not mumbo jumbo at all.
Yeah, for some folks it is though, you know. Yeah, those I'm playing drums with them as well, you know, those clouds up there, like, get me? So that's beyond the reactionary Blackness of I'm Black and I'm proud because you've made me something else. You've made me unproud of myself, of my features, of my culture. I'm so proud. I'm so in tune. That's why I asked you about Carly. You know, that's like beyond a physical personification as a woman. She's the yin to his yang, but they're both like destroyers of.
Connected.
But they're and that's the other thing as well. Another Eurocentric concept is to think that male and female aren't connected, but they're not diametric opposites. They're sympathetic parallels. You know, they work with each other. I'm 23. chromosomes of male and 23 chromosomes of female. It's just that I'm slightly to the left or slightly to the right.
It's a spectrum, I feel,
Right.
of identity, and
Right.
there's so much transience, which is why we have transgender identity in that. And then it's finding that you don't look at it binarily. You just look at the person. You're just like, wow, this is you. This is your essence. Perceived is what I'm saying as a woman, but how I identify, and that's the thing. Like when
How you
see
identify something
yourself
else.
versus how other people perceive you is also like
Yeah, of course.
that's part of the
How
Black
I'm
experience in general.
In most definitely. I am talking about, like I said, cosmic realities and physical realities.
Yeah.
And Kali is represented as a woman in the sense of
exactly.
the feminine aspect of a particular universal and cosmic dynamic, but is the feminine aspect of that. Mm-hmm. And then there is a male aspect, as I was saying, is Shiva. It's that cosmic blackness as well. It's that there's a, like I say, there's an earthly realm version of this person, this female character, and then there's this bigger picture, you know, behind the scenes.
You got it. You absolutely got it. Yeah, that is me. I'm kind of embodying cosmic blackness, but I want people to think more about who Kali is and then what they would look like if you saw them. I started observing, not necessarily like the traditions, but just learning a lot about like Carnatic music and then Hinduism alongside that. Around like 2010, around the same time I started listening to Heavy to Ninja Tune, and I just fell in love. Kali was the first that I gravitated to. So when I started working for the metal magazine and they already had the persona Nicole Kali, I was like, this is something I need to do. Yeah.
Kalima. Kalima. Yeah.
She is a master. She's awesome.
And it's funny, you know, with other cultures that were here in my growing up, there was a lot of South Asian people. And so you'd hear these words, but usually in a derogatory way. Someone might be dissing you, you know, some Indian or Pakistani person. Kalashidi, you know, like, but it's actually so much grander and grandiose than even they understand.
It's so true.
The phrases that they're using. It's quite interesting. There's a lot of disrespectful words that people use for Black folks around the world, and they're actually super big ups, but no one knows. It's like no one knows the language they're using. These Nagas, these Gala, calling me Black God. So yeah, thank you. Cool.
Yes.
Cool.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for speaking to that truth. Listen, because I grew up alongside South Asian people too, South Asian communities. I love them, respect. That's one thing that England and the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia area have in common is that it's extremely multicultural. And there's a lot of people from that side of the world here. The community members that I had that were like Tamil, for example, that were dark skinned, would be on the receiving end of that criticism like you would, just because their skin was darker. And then I realized, oh, we share solidarity in that anti-Blackness is a global thing and we have to fight against that together because it's there, you know, even if you don't necessarily phrase it in a way where it's anti-Black, casteism and shadeism is a form of anti-Blackness, and you're using those terms against people that way.
Most definitely. I mean, I would actually say that within the South Asian communities, it is actually anti-Black. I would actually say it is casteism, but the root of, through a study of history and the original Indus Valley cultures and things like that, you'll see that those people were Black and were some of the ancients, Herodotus and people like that, like, oh, this is another part of Ethiopia, because the people are almost the same, like, yeah, language, culture, you look the same, you're dark skinned, cool. Yeah, right from Ethiopia across through what is now Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, through into India, you know, and that's why to this day, I mean, there's an area just up the road from here, and there's loads of Somali people, Sudani, and recently more Ethiopian, but also the people that they roll with the closest are the Yemenis, because they have that ancient, they're Arab, but they almost look the same, like they sit in the same coffee shops, they talk to each other. Like, they're like that.
They
They were
vibe.
like that 3,000 years ago, and they're like that 3 hours ago, you know, just a mile up the road. And we don't understand that. The world doesn't understand that. We black folks, like I say, this bigger blackness beyond African Americanism or Caribbeanism or Nigerianism. The wrestlers come out in UFC, and they're from East Russia, you know, the former Soviet Union, Dagestan. A lot of people, a lot of good wrestlers. They wear a hat that looks like an afro.
They do.
There's a reason for that. And if you have who the people were from there for thousands of years ago, the Colchians. But even when we say, oh, the Caucasus Mountains, people say, oh, white culture. But who got there first to change, you know? Who got to India? Throughout the African continent, you have the widest amount of DNA, you know, it's so diverse. It's kind of more diverse than the rest of humanity put together.
Yes.
And the next place is India. Like you were just saying about Indian Sri Lankans and Dravidians, Tamils.
There was more of a confluence in the origin story, right?
Yeah.
And I love that. It's to be in flux,
yeah, so
right?
Flux. You've got people that look Chinese in India. You got people that look black in India. You got people that look white in India. Okay. You've got people that look Indian in India, and they're all next door to each other. They're all neighbors. They're all interconnected. You know, we are all that. You know, interconnected in that sense. Yeah, yes. Definitely.
Are we at the Church of Rock, Juice? The Church of Rock right now.
Do you like that tune?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
I haven't listened to that album for ages, and I literally was gonna put it up on my Bandcamp recently, so I pulled out, you know, some of the original discs. So it's funny. I was just thinking about these songs the other day, not even a week ago. Yeah.
What came to mind?
With the song or
with the entire album, Jerusalem Come? What had you been started?
What that was about was something similar to what we're talking about. I was looking at the roots of words and what Jerusalem means, founded in peace, which is what it's meant to be, but it's usually embroiled in conflict, you know, between Jews, Christians, Muslims, and others. And sort of, in my own way, trying to find a way through the various different faiths and histories, but then also spelling it in a way that ties it to other lineages. So the first bit being Jeru or Heru from a Kemetic kind of background, Salam being the Arabic way of, in English at least, of saying or spelling peace. And I'm just trying to like, sort of like, yeah, let's get back to that peace, you know? Jerusalem Come, which is similar to like Kingdom Come, you know, something in the book of Revelation.
That's right.
About when the spaceships are coming back and
that's right.
The new Jerusalem as a bride to the groom as it comes back down to earth, close to earth for the rapture. And the book of Revelation was one of the first things I read that ever scared me.
What was scary about the imagery of Revelation?
Angels hovering above the earth, 7 bowls of blood pouring into the earth, people running around screaming, the dead are coming back to life, death on a horse, the blade, the blood, and there's more blood, deafening, and I didn't sleep good that night.
Listen, neither did I, and I'm asking because so many of us became metalheads and rock stars. After reading this like super metal like imagery, it's like, whoa, that was a vision. Like someone was really going
metal as fuck is goth, man.
That night I became a metal. Some references to cosmic blackness. I mean, you got it with Parliament right on down the line, like the mothership coming to take me away. Like it comes from revelations in ancient times, is kind of connecting to the stars, heavenly visitation, and then going off somewhere else in the space.
And you know what's interesting as well? I mean, this is a whole other conversation. I don't want to open it too far. But Sun Ra, while being one of the first people to claim abduction and connection with aliens in the USA, one of the first people, is also to this day one of the only Black people. So
what was going on here. And I can see that being a draw, you know, I can see like any being being drawn to Sun Ra, you know, and him willingly going because, you know, Blackness is accepting that cosmic journey and just going with it, like Fantastic Voyage, like on the real.
So yeah, that's interesting as well.
That is interesting. Wow.
So was it a willing thing, like an Elijah translation type
I was
of thing?
about to say, it ties into some of us are prophets, right? Like the Black griots and those of us who have, our philosophy has taken us to another plane, perhaps, you know, like we do have that connection with the stars. And
have you ever read the Nigger Bible? It's a great title. I don't know who this is, by a guy called Robert H. Decoy. The speeches and everything that ended up being Message to the Black Man. I think it's the same year. And he was talking about, like, is Islam for the Black man? Is Judaism for, is secularism? Is this? And he was proposing this thing. Basically, like just being a nigger. We're everything. And he goes through all these things like niggeroon and nigger. Anyway, he has several different parts in his book, and one of them is talking about these Black Martians, Martuk and Marte, and their observations on things. I can't remember the whole thing. I haven't read it for years, but so it always struck me as I want to. Every time I say Martuk and Marte, no one knows what I'm on about, and I wonder who he was as an author because his name's Robert H. Decoy, you know. Interesting
point. These influences have flowed into AfroFlux, these like kind of different experiences, these musings that you've had of people's true origin story. Is it space? Is
Most
it
definitely.
The stars? Is it that their wisdom was something that was astral?
Yeah. I mean, personally, I don't doubt that. With AfroFlux as well, because I have open events where people of, I mean, it's we have people of all, even though I aim it at Black and brown people, have all types of folks.
Word.
And we've done different events, different things. Some are 10 people in a room drawing and live drawing. Some of it's a few hundred people watching a showcase or a film or something like that. But that is I try not to overbear my thing on it because I want other people see, like you say, I'm non-binary. So for me, I never push that as a thing, like, oh, we want non-binary women to come and do, I don't push it as a thing. But when people come and they say I'm non-binary, I'm like, okay, so what is that? What does that mean? How does this play out? How do you, and then you'll always get young people. If you're doing things, you'll always have younger people around you. And the thing is, try your best to learn while not trying to be them. I'm not growing my green dreadlocks anytime yet.
Yeah.
But I'm always debating. I'm always learning. I'm always taking it on. So like I just said, all these phrases are new to me.
Yeah.
Even Afrofuturism is a relatively new phrase to me.
It's new, period. But we've been doing it before the term, haven't we?
Exactly. I mean, I do remember when Kodwo Eshun's book came out, More Brilliant Than the Sun. And I do, somewhere in the mid early 90s, 94, 95. And I remember there was a whole bunch of people that I used to kind of hang out with and go and see their shows. I don't know if you know Benji Reed, John Z. D, all those guys, yeah? It led to be all the lyrical theatre, some of the first like hip hop theatre stuff that was going on in the UK and in the world actually.
Yeah, in the world, period. Wow.
And there was a lot of important moves being made at that time. And some of those people, like Attica Blues and all those guys, they like, Juice, this book's out. This is you. This is you. Oh, was it? Oh, Kadwa, Kadwa. And his brother used to write for, or still does, write for one of the big black newspapers in Britain. And so we knew who they are. They were a very well-known academic family, good writers and everything. Kadwa's wrote this book. Kadwa, it's called Afrofuturism. It's you, bro. It's you. This book's about you. You need to read it. And I'm kind of like,
yeah, look.
Get it off me. He don't know me. He don't know me. I was a bit, yeah. Keep that over there for now, bro. Yeah, little more. And I was interested, but I was like, well, how can these group of people be telling me I have to read this book? And I respect them. I respect their views. I respect their critique on things. I respect their, there's some people you'll listen to and they say, watch this film. I think you'll enjoy it. But for some reason, I didn't check that book out for like another 15 years.
Wow.
I'm a bit hard-headed sometimes. Like I say, you got these multiple versions of you, and I've still not read it. There's books I've had since I've been a kid that I use as reference books, but I've read excerpts of it, a chunk here and a couple of chapters there. And
same. Yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah, I can't. I realize I was asking, don't get it on me. I realize it's been in me all the time, like every time I read, I know that I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, I think, fuck, I'm in the book, shit.
It's you. But you were resistant to being defined.
I guess so. Yeah.
Okay.
And so,
yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So I heard the term years ago, but I only shifted into it in the last 5-6 years or so. At the time that I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm going to do something with it. AfroFlux. Let me make it a bit easier even though it is easier in many ways, but let me not make it that it's so hard for the next generation of young black and brown kids to tell their parents they want to be cartoonists or comic writers or skateboard or do computer graphics or gaming, or they want to play Dungeons. Like, yo, I got a story about Dungeons and Dragons. Like, my dad asked me what I want for Christmas one year, and I was like, we had the adverts in the back of the comics, and Dungeons and Dragons was always advertising there. TSR. Dad, I want that. What up? I was dragging. I was like, and he was asking me what it is, and I'm like, I can't explain because it's role playing. I don't know. I've never played it, but I'm intrigued. It's got a dragon and a warrior and a sword, and my dad's just like, what up? Christmas Day, we all get our presents. I go upstairs to open mine because I'm not sure what it is. Everyone else has a vague idea of what they're getting. And the way it was, my parents weren't rich, so it was only 1 or 2 people could have a big present per year, depending on when their birthday was and all this kind of stuff. So if there's a computer, one person gets it, everyone else has normal presents, one person gets a computer, but everyone can use it. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. Same in my house.
So because this thing cost a little bit more than what my dad was expecting to pay, basically it better be good. So when I open this box, I take this box upstairs. I open it, it's got the dragon. There's 2 books in there, some dice, and a sheet of paper or something. I'm like, oh fuck, what am I gonna tell my dad now? Because I'm upstairs, I'm reading this thing, I'm like, I'm getting intrigued. But on one level, I'm a bit let down. Like, some books I paid, there's no dragon, there's no.
Yeah.
And then I play the first adventure. They give you an introductory game without a dungeon master, and they explain what the warrior is, the elf, the delineation, like lawful, chaotic, neutral, this, evil. And I'm reading this. I'm like, this is great. I play the first game on your own, and then it leads you into like, now it shows you what your attack, your defense, how you grow your character, you know, what role playing is basically.
Classic D&D.
And then it lets you kind of just, now you are free to adventure into the world of Dungeons and Dragons, go and find more friends to play. And I'm like, oh, fuck. I'm upstairs in this room on my own. Everyone else is downstairs eating, like, you know, turkey and opening presents, normal presents, socks and footballs and computer games. And I'm like, I need people to play this, but I know no one downstairs is going to want to play this or going to be able to. All my brothers and sisters weren't really old enough to, because I'm the oldest. So they're calling me, my dad's calling me down, yeah, let us have a look at the game, let's have a look. Let's see what it is.
Put you on the spot.
Like this expensive 2 books and dice.
Yeah.
I've just got into the world myself, but because I sat there for, you know, an hour and played I'm not going to show my dad the books. It's all right. I'll come down later. But from there, I was hooked.
That's so cool, Juice.
I was hooked.
I love it.
And it was, even back then, it was so hard to find people to play Dungeons and Dragons. If you get some black people that are interested, then they start talking about witchcraft and obia and that look demonic and that they look now look Christian and this now look right and why them have this and we are roll the dice. I mean, you know, and then you go to your black Muslim friends and they're like, no, we don't do dice, we don't, you know, we're not supposed to, that's like divination, and they're like,
oh wow.
For the next, and it is easier, to be fair, because I've had fights because I read comics. I've had to have fights. Like people are like, what's this? You still reading this? Or you know, girls like you, but what's that in your hand? Oh, it's Daredevil. Yeah. I mean, like a comic, Daredevil. Like, yeah. He's a blind lawyer. Like, who fights crime by night. His senses are really...
Daredevil.
You know what's crazy is...
Oh, come on, y'all.
The TV shows on, everyone loves it now. Everyone's a fan of X-Men now, of some form of the films or the cartoons.
By some cruel twist of fate, Juice, the geeks that got beat up for this stuff are on top of the world now.
Oh, I never said I got beat up. I said I had fights.
I mean, thank goodness for you. Like I did. I had to fight to be like an Inuyasha and Metalhead fan because I occupied a lot of multiple spaces. So when I hear you talk about it's tough for me to be a Dungeons and Dragons fan, totally, I got that. You know, like I saw my friends go through the same thing, trying to just have that alternative geek influx space. But it wasn't quite there yet, you know, we had to define it for ourselves. And now it's here, you know?
It really wasn't, and you know, I had my own hesitancies. I remember a point in time, funny enough, you guys like with rock, and I remember guitars were this alien, certain rock guitars I used to love. Do you know the band Third World?
Yeah, vaguely.
Yeah. They were really big on Island Records, and they were this kind of, though they were Caribbean playing reggae, it wasn't reggae like real roots reggae. It was like this, they were playing like world music on some, so the song would be a reggae song, and then at the end, it would go into this kind of rock, like, you know, even like the Isleys, Jasper Isley would do these, you know, some bands like War as well, with this kind of fusion. Yeah. And this was the Caribbean version of this. Those are the only guitars I'd like. And guitars were this weird thing for me. White boy shit, you know what I mean? It was like, ugh.
Yeah. No, I totally feel that.
And it was a cliche, but it was Jimi Hendrix. Someone passed me a tape with loads of Jimmy stuff on and live. And then all of a sudden I got guitars. I understood them. And I was like, oh. This is live, you get me?
All of a sudden, it was just like your life changed. All of a sudden, it's like the shirt I was gonna wear was this.
I had a very similar shirt and similar
but design. I decided not to, and that's really interesting that you said that.
I was gonna put on my Bad Brains shirt, actually, and I decided that was actually, I've got about 4 Bad Brains t-shirts, and it just happened to be a shirt for that came up for today. Like, I don't choose them, I just pick them. And I was like, no, that's too cliche to sit here with the black, the black rock and sit in black.
We want to see the rock influences, which leads me to our next statement. Black Rockers United. How did you unite to rock? How did you get into it? Jimi Hendrix.
Well, that tape with Jimmy on had a bit of Beach Boys on as well. The trippier Beach Boys stuff, not the surfing.
Right. Okay.
And that was a big deal for me. And it's funny coming from Birmingham because it's heavy in metal, like it's heavy metal.
Black Sabbath town.
Yeah, it's like Black Sabbath and everybody from here,
Yeah.
It's a friend, his cousin, but he was this really cool dude, like white kid, just really clued into cool shit. There's always someone who's just naturally, like, a lot of the people I knew who were into cool shit, it was always the obvious black stuff like funk, soul, jazz, reggae. Jazz fusion was really big here in the UK back in the day, and what we would call rare grooves as well. Stuff like that, you expected people, that was the lead up to hip hop for us, ska,
Really?
calypso, rocksteady, that was the lead up to us. But for this dude, he was playing like, he was into his Black Flag and Butthole Surfers and Suicidals and stuff like that. But the band that blew my mind was Bad Brains, basically. And I was listening to the stuff, and I'm like, it was a Quickness album, and I'm listening, and I'm like, I'm hearing that, I'm like, this is heavy, but it's got a groove. I was like, there's something different about this. I was like, and I didn't think it was black guys. I just thought it's got a groove. But then I'd hear like Queen of Sheba, and I'm like, yo, what's? Then I look at the album cover, and it looks like a roots rock, like Rasta reggae. It looks like the records that my mum's got. That was my mum's shit, like roots,
100%.
culture, like Iroy, the music and the picture of the album cover, and I'm like, but the song's called, like, talking about Queen of Sheba. Yes. Yo, that expanded. Yo, expand your mind. That was, from there, I'm not going to say I became a rocker, because I didn't, but that just opened, like, that Jimmy tape and that Bad Brains album.
Yes.
Gone clear.
Get it. It was like a fire lit in you, and it was these two black rock bands that started it, basically.
So from there, again, I used to go to a lot of what they used to call alternative nights,
Cool.
which meant 98% white folks, really. It's really weird because Birmingham's got a really big black tradition and black history, and especially in clubs and music and.
Right on.
Yeah, good. But it really sidestepped the world. It sidestepped a lot of it, and some of the clubs and things like that. Mm-hmm. And so one of the only black-owned most black-owned venues and things were outside of the city, and they'd be in areas like that you might have heard of, like Handsworth, Steel Pulse, and things like that. Newtown, Aston. But one of the only black-owned clubs, but obviously black-owned, that people knew it was not in a secret way. It was a place called the Hummingbird. And mostly that was where you'd go and see reggae, soul. If Freddie McGregor was coming, if Public Enemy was coming, if Supercat was coming, that's where they'd be.
That was a spot.
That's where I saw like EP, I saw even like up to 90s reggae artists like Bushman and Buju Banton and people like that. But on the midweek, they'd have these. There was loads of other pubs and bars, but one of the biggest alternative nights was at this black club as well, this black venue. So it was really interesting
That is so interesting.
so yeah, you know, black people are way broad-minded in these regards.
Yeah, we are. We really are.
And so these other alternative bars and clubs were relatively small. They'd hold 100 people, 50 people, whatever. But this venue would have hundreds of people in. And I remember being in there and another place called the Ship Ashore, and this song came on. I'm like, what is this? Who is this? Oh, it's a band called Nirvana. Oh, I've heard of them, but I don't know. Is this what their stuff is? This sounds like someone's playing hip hop, but shouting over it. The drums are like hip hop straight up, but like live hip hop.
Yeah.
Nirvana. And then I hear it again in the Ship Ashore, hear it again at this, at the Hummingbird. Yo, that was another moment. Like, they're gonna be big. I knew this. I didn't know how big they were gonna be, but I had my A&R ear on. You know, like, this is gonna be some big stuff. And then obviously Nirvana is to this day still iconic. You know, which is a great. I was just talking about this the other day. The fact that they're called Nirvana and their first album was called Nevermind. Nevermind. Nirvana is what? But it's not heaven like, it's heaven like, it's not even heaven, it's like, it's just the ending of personal desires and lust, like the end of the ego, the end of I is you.
It's just transcending.
It's transcending, but yeah, never mind, no mind, you know, like Zen.
Yeah.
You know, the album title is Zen as well, like Nirvana is like, yeah, that was an eye-opener. But then getting with a partner later as a black woman who also was into some of these bands and the crossover bands that were like Disposable Heroes out of Beatniks, and so she was into like Black Monks, she was into 24/7 Spies. We were both into Living Colour. We were both already into Bad Brains, but she had more of the records than me. Because I was still buying more hip hop. Like if I had £20, I'm buying 2 hip hop albums when they used to be about £10. But she'd have these albums, you know, these Bad Brains stuff. And I mean, one of the greatest fans, I gave her this HR album on vinyl. And yeah, so we both got into stuff like a lot of Suicidals.
Yeah, Suicidal Tendencies.
Yeah, you know.
Punk forever.
And there was a crossover, you know how culture goes as well. So by this time, my brother was skating as well. So I made it easier for him to do stuff.
Sure
so he was more of a street dude than me. He was more on road, my brother. More like, you know, smoking, drinking, girls, doing little petty crime shit, you know, like he was more into that. But he was also opened up to these alternative things that you could do. So they had a little live band for a while. He'd skate more than me as well. I'd skate like, I wasn't a good skater, but we'd just find the most steep hill and just go down as fast as we could and try and survive. But he was actually, you know, they were cutting and they were doing all the grinds and, you know, they're just practicing the ollies all day and their little slides and glides and all that and the rock walk, and that was one of the only things I could do properly. So that was a crossover because then the tape started coming out with the skating on and the snowboard. You remember all like the extreme games and stuff?
Yeah, I was about to say, because black skateboarders were hanging out with like the white kids that skateboarded, we would trade music a lot of the time when we rolled together, you know what I mean? And they'd be like, yo, what do you listen to? Public Enemy. What do you listen to? Anthrax. And then they would literally perform together back in the day, right? And you would have this rock, hip hop, rap connection, and it was cemented through skateboarding. So then, like you said, you'd have the Extreme Games, Tony Hawk, Pro Skater, and it was just like from there, like kids like me.
Yeah, that was because I had to have the pro skaters, they'd have even like no effects on and stuff like that, right? On some of those games, and they'd have a lot of stuff on there, like very punky stuff. Yeah, and the tapes, the VHS tapes, look, Rodney Mullen and all them people, and obviously Tony Hawk, and
Yeah.
what's that black dude who was in Kids as well, and I think he passed away.
Yeah, Harold. I forgot his last name,
Yeah,
but Harold was great, and he was
yeah,
definitely
those kind of cats on the
yeah.
on these tapes, but the music was this mad mix of, like you say, it'd be going to thrashy skate stuff, but then it'd go into like DJ Shadow beats and stuff, and
Yeah.
Black Alicious would feature on those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think of the groups. Del the Funky Homo Sapien, because he
Yeah.
kind of represented that like West Coast Bay Area like difference. You know, I got a nose ring early. You know, I got a white girl. I take acid.
The whole like hieroglyphic, like Bay Area, California hip hop,
Yeah.
and just the entire span of music, which I knew that had an influence on AfroFlux. I wanted to hear it from you personally.
Yeah, Del was dope, man. I mean, he still is like. But Hyro were heavy, Casual. All of them, they were heavy. I tell you, my biggest rap influences that crossed over: Jungle Brothers. I mean, like Sonics now and Aesthetics. Ultramagnetics, very big for me. Divine Styler, I was talking about him just earlier. Did you ever hear his second album, Spiral Walls?
Let me look it up. I'm looking it up after this.
Yo, this dude was already like out there, like poetry, like the look, the vibe, the energy, the wordplay was already next level.
So cool.
And then he had some life issues, money issues, children, this, that. Discovered acid, discovered guitars, discovered Jimi Hendrix. Same thing, but just at a slightly later date.
Yeah.
His label was waiting for this next underground hip hop sensation. Yo, this dude was not like he only raps about 4 times on his album. There's screamo, electronica, there's straight up like Sufi, hippie guitar, like folk guitar. It's just like in a world of you, in a world of you. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's so for all the fans that were waiting for Divine Styler to come back with his like hard raps and his intricate abstract style, yo, you know when you go left.
When you go left and you just do the crossover, because that's what Blackness is, that's what we do.
But no one was ready,
But no one was ready for it quite yet. Not quite yet.
No one was ready, like, but you know what's been interesting? As I've traveled and bump into people and they become associates and friends and colleagues, and the Mike Lads, the Antipop Consortiums, the Saul Williamses, and we talk, and I say, oh, blah, blah, blah. Do you like Jungle Brothers? I love Jungle Brothers. You think about Divine Styler? Oh my God, Divine Styler was amazing for me. Oh, you too? What do you think of the second album? Oh, dude, that blew my heart. So we've all got that. Nearly all the people I've worked with, they're Divine Styler fans. We don't know that. We find that out after. Sometimes after I've known them for 5 years. And it's like, oh, okay. To the point where Divine Styler even became a byword for like left field hip hop kind of stuff. Like,
oh wow,
there was
kind of like a euphemism. Like if you want to refer to like barrier pushing stuff, you just say Divine Styler.
There was a zine at one point in time called, because when he disappeared, just before and even after that album, he called Where's Divine Styler? There was a zine called that dealt with underground, like alternative hip hop, skate stuff, rock, you know, metal.
Amazing.
I've never got a copy of it, so if anyone has an issue, let me know. But yeah, Where's Divine Styler? And he disappeared like for another few years. Then he had his first album's called Word Power. Then he pops up years later, then does Word Power 2. Then he disappears for about another 15 years.
Yeah.
Then he does Directrix, like his Word Power 2. Then he does another one. And then he only did another album about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So he's only had 4 or 5 albums in 25, 30 years, you know. It's like, all amazing stuff though. But that second album, do check it out. Do check it out if you want to see. That was another eye opener for me, an ear opener for guitars and different things, different ways to make music.
Divine Styler is like, how did you formulate your sound? Well, you formulated it by other crossover artists, so now you literally have a sound that spans the entirety of music. Influences from all around the world, and you're also exploring your identity through art.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, in my head, I'm making hip hop. But one of the things, especially with the guy who's produced a lot of my music over the years, because we had a group called Gamma as well. I don't know if you are aware of a group called Gamma. That was also on Big Dada. And those are brothers of mine that we met in different ways. Ibu was one of the first out of that group that I met in Birmingham. He was a DJ, producer, Ibu, Blackitude. And then he moved to London. And he's the main reason I went to London as well for a period of time.
Okay.
Because he'd be like, bro, come down, there's this, there's that. There's always more money, there's more connections to publishing and more freebies, more events, more everything basically.
Yeah.
Birmingham to this day does not have a regular, it doesn't have one label like that's based here as far as hip hop goes. Okay. People release from here, don't get me wrong, there's hundreds of people that have made music from here. And have maybe had a label for a year and a half or 6 months, but there's no Sony here, there's no Warner Chappell here. You get me? So he was like, come down, there's these MC battles, there's money basically. You know, this one you win £100, you know, back when £100 was some money.
I know, right?
And yeah, you win £50 for this one and you can win this and enter this. I really felt like I don't want to sully myself, like, because, you know, I know this is really ego and pride and even a bit of like, I'm above it all, you know, because when you freestyle, I mean, actual off the top of the head freestyles, in order for people, the average person, to understand that you're making up off the spot, you have to say blatant things to show I'm in the zone. Look at this, I've got a black phone. And as you do that, it kind of, it can let down your skill. Because he'd tell me like, there's an ultramagnetic sound, he's like, bring it down to earth. The hook is, bring it down to earth, I don't understand. Bring it down to earth, I don't understand. And he'd tell me like, bro, you got to bring it down to earth because I'm rapping up here, and you have to kind of come, like, check the crowd, like, look what they're into.
Gotcha.
And so I remember even some of the judges would be like, oh, that was really cool, but you weren't freestyling because I'm kind of being too intricate, or you're not talking about what's going on here.
Okay.
And I am, but I was doing wordplay. I was doing it this way. I was being a bit more abstract. So I'd have to learn. So it was a learning curve for me, actually.
Totally.
And then we met through that. I met a guy called Lord Redeemer, and then he became another member of Gamma, and then we had a collective known as Shadowless, which we still kind of operates in a way as well. All of those guys and the production of Blackitude, and then another brother by the name of M3, Mr. Mitchell. There's always a root of reggae. All of us have a Caribbean background. Some of us have spent time over there or lived there for a while. Or we all got what we know. Our first single was called Black Atlantean, based off the idea of the Black Atlantic, you know. But our music is hip hop with this probably a reggae B line going underneath. So the hip hop drums, but there's always a, kind of thing happening underneath. But it was only when the reviews would come in, and then people would say, I partly remember a review that said something along the lines of, Gamma obviously listened to a lot of raw and unfiltered electronica. And we're like, do we? It's like, we don't, but that's what people hear. You know, we hear what we want to hear. We hear from our
hear what we want to hear.
Like what you said before about descriptions of me saying, oh, you're a woman. You're like, well, not exactly.
Yeah.
You know, what that age-old scientific thing of physics, you know, the quantum, like the perspective, the person, how they look at the universe, it changes the universe, you know. And I always say to my children, perspective changes the universe. You know, just by looking at something, you change it. Just by listening to something, you actually change the work of art, because you turn around and say, oh, that's jazz. Oh no, that's bebop jazz. Oh, that's avant.
Yeah.
Or we say that's just music, you know. Yeah, there's a lot of musical influences in my music, but not in the obvious. I'm never trying to make rock. I'm never trying to make this or that. It's, you know, but then I work with people that are from those fields as well. I do work with, and I love that on the live. When it comes down to live and someone's from a different background, a different backdrop, I love that, because they'll play when it comes to live music now, they're playing in such a different way. Things will land differently because they're from jazz, or they're from rock, or they're from folk, or whatever.
Totally.
It's like, oh, yeah.
Totally. Yeah. My last brew talk with Flora Lucini, she comes from a professional jazz background. So that's what she grew up hearing. And then she played that way. And then she flowed into punk, because we were talking about how a lot of jazz artists take the kind of intricate background of jazz and then play a simpler version of punk, you know? Just kind of like take a few elements out, make it like a little more hard hitting, you know? And I like that. It's cool. The similarities and how they influence each other is amazing to me.
Yeah. So what do you do? I don't know you. I haven't looked you up.
Multimedia artist / researcher. Right now I'm doing a lot of diasporic research for Black Rockers United, kind of putting together a timeline of the different genres of heavy music.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see what you get up to with that, what your findings are, you know.
For sure. AfroFlux partners with Languages for a Digizine, Codes of the Flux, and it is a multilingual cultural art project that combines commentary on code switching and transient identity in private versus public space, which we got into earlier with how Black people have kind of always been that alternative space ourselves with our interest. And then we take these interests and we kind of go to public spaces and we code switch with all of that. Would you want to like explore that, you know, and talk about that? I think that's really cool.
I mean, yeah, and on one level, again, these new phrases for things that you already do, that you already know. Code switching is a relatively new phrase, at least to the UK, as I think it's a US phrase. But as you said before, we can trace it to someone such as Du Bois, W.E.B. Du Bois, with double consciousness, you know, with that whole sense of being aware of who you are, where you're from, where you're really from, and your innate self and what you have to present to the public and to the public awareness. The fact of the matter is, right now, what I could see of your hair, as beautiful as it is that some people would consider that not to be professional, you know, and they'd probably have a word with you in private, like if you could do anything about it.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, Britain's a very polite society, so they're not racist. You know, I'm not prejudiced, but I just have to ask you if you could do anything about your hair.
Indeed.
So we continually have these conversations about, and that colorism comes into it, race, sex, gender, class, all the usual culprits are there. And then with Black folks, it affects us particularly bad. But what we were doing, we were supposed to do a live real zine, and then the conversations were meant to happen in public, but then COVID happened,
Okay.
And I said, oh, we're not going to do it. And then something took hold of me a few weeks in. And I was like, I'm not sitting in. I put myself into quarantine about a week before. And I could see where things were going.
Mm-hmm.
Boris isn't ours. No offense to people called Boris or arses. But this, you know, I think it's very interesting that you have a leader of the country where you are that thinks they're very similar, but one thinks they're super intelligent and he's often proven not to be. One pretends that he's not very intelligent and very well schooled. He pretends he's not doing what he intends to do. And one of the things he does is pretend to be fumbling and bumbling. And so you never get a clear picture. And so he's always let off the hook for responsibility for anything.
Yes.
And so I took responsibility for myself, put myself away for about a week, made sure I got a bit of shopping, a bit of food.
Yeah.
2-3 weeks in, 2.5 weeks in it was. And some things I said, yo, the world's going to be changed from now on. Like this is madness. This is the whole world. This isn't just a city or a town or one country. I need to go out. And at this time, because of the bumbling, no one knew what they were allowed to do. Are you allowed to touch people? Are you allowed to, can you kiss? Can you run? Can you go to the park? Can you, can you, no one knew what they should be doing. So I went to the park a couple times. The first time I went, no one was there. Beautiful day, enjoyed it, sat down. Next time I went, loads of families there. Like I went 2 days later, families, people playing football. I was like, oh, this ain't gonna
Oh
last.
yeah, no way.
Then the police started to come to the parks and
Mm-hmm.
coming to the park with no masks on, going over to groups of young men, telling them to move on. I realized I need to do something. So then I got back into the project. Then that's why we decided to do it digitally.
Oh, good.
And so we did another section called Quarantine Conversations. I don't know if you saw that.
I did. I loved it.
Cool,
I loved
cool.
it.
Yeah, all of them are friends of mine, people that I've worked with. Son is a cosplayer. So she is that generation. She's grown up all like anime, martial arts, manga, cosplay. This is normal for her as a young black religious person. This is normal. So we're not in the era where black people think everything is evil and obia. It's not if it's got guitars or metal or horns. We're in the era now where these young people study Korean, study Japanese. My daughter turns around to me and says phrases in Japanese or Korean. I'm like,
why? Oh my goodness.
Young Hasayo to you, you know? That's the era we're in. So we talk to these people. A friend of mine who's Chinese, lives in Singapore, Mike Ladd, Charlotte Bailey, who's an amazing writer and comic maker, and she's now a filmmaker as well. She's an artist. So we talked, and then myself, Charlotte, were contributors to the zine. I was actually meant to be someone else. That was, I feel, I had to do my art very quick because it's funny. I used to make comics when I was a kid and never finished them. So this was the first comic I've been involved in myself. I've done stuff with comic folks before, but this is the first time because someone else was meant to do the art, do a quick zine.
Right.
And then they, you know how it is, people
yeah,
flop.
Always. Like that's what I was about to ask.
I quickly was like, oh, I need to do this, finish this in like 2 days. I better get doodling quick, you know. But I was glad I did it as well. And then in the middle of the zine, if it was a physical thing, we were going to have a connection to the song, which is the Code Flux. And then we're going to like give the link out to people so there's a song to listen to. But because it's digital, we embedded it into the page. So then you can actually hear it. So you get so that's a friend of mine called Zaid Dust, who's South Asian background. And he's very mindful of the anti-black racism in some South Asian cultures, but he's also mindful of how that can also, doesn't want to be the guy that trying to be black either. So he still has his own culture, he still has his own language, but he represents all these nuances in his speech and thinking. So he has the breakdown as well. So that becomes part of the zine as well. So Charlotte's talking from her understanding of code switching. I do my understanding, and but it was very enjoyable.
I could tell.
Yeah, I'm glad. I will that most people that have seen both of those parts of the project have enjoyed it. So it's mostly,
I love it.
Mostly been good. Yeah.
So how have you evolved in the last 5 months, Juice? And is it connections to other artists that operate beyond society's limits and Flux that helps too during quarantine?
Of course. I mean, how I've evolved, I don't know. Personally, I'd have to probably look at it in a retrospective manner at a later point in time. I will say this, and I've said it a few times before. I'm glad for the reggae and the hip hop being these two cultural dominators in my life, and not only cultural dominators, but the original sources of my world thinking and my philosophy. And so nothing that's happening right now, like I say, the first 2 weeks I was a bit like, what am I doing? What can I do? Because instantly I lost a load of gigs. I lost a load of workshops. I lost a lot. You're thinking of money, you're thinking of economics, you're thinking of bills. But after I sat down, after I sat down and really thought about it, I was like, hold on. I have reggae songs. I have songs by Peter Tosh. I have songs by Culture. I have songs by Wu-Tang Clan. I have songs by Jungle Brothers. I have songs by Mortal Technique. I have songs by Black Twang. I have songs by Roots Maneuver. You know, they don't seem too keen to write off the third world debt. You know, how we juggle things proper. You know, I have songs by Saul Williams. I have songs by Mike Ladd. I'm building a bodacious bodega for the race war. I have songs by all kind of artists that have already told me this is happening in different ways. And it's like down with like the whole Wu-Tang movement. Their whole output is about the last days, you know, gas mask, get your guns, learn to shoot, do your push-ups, tighten your boots up.
The hood's been a war zone this whole time.
It's not changing. It's not new. We've been warned. We've been told, if you really are a hip hopper, if you really are into cultural music, if you really are a reggae artist, if you're really into rock, real rock, I mean like punk, punk. If you're really about it, like the original roots of these things, there's the rebellious element, there's the hustling element of street music and stuff, all very real. But then there's a core element of what some people would just call the knowledge, like, or the fifth element of hip hop or something like that. My mum told me, always make sure you've got beans or chickpeas in the make sure you got some rice, whatever, no matter how much money you've got, have some dried foodstuffs, have a couple of tins of tomatoes. She didn't tell me about a pandemic. She didn't tell me about coronavirus, but she told me, I said, why, Mum? Because something might happen. I mean, something might happen. Yeah. That's what she told me. Something might happen. Make sure you got ginger. Make sure you got garlic. Make sure you got this. Make sure. Wow. So, if we go to the roots of it, in a black diasporic fashion, in a hip hop fashion, in an Afrofuturist fashion, in a roots rock reggae fashion, we've been told. So, have I developed? Yeah, I'm sure I have. I've had to spend more time with myself. More people have let me down, but then did they let me down, or did I put expectations on them thinking that they're like me? But what I have learned is I already knew this. What I have learned is I'm glad I had them chickpeas in the cupboard, and that rice, and the 2 tin of mackerel, and did you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, no, for real.
The tin of tomatoes and the little bit of coconut water I had, and I had a water filter. You know, you should already have all these. I'm not trying to blame nobody, but
all of that.
I already have my colloidal silver. You get me?
Yeah.
So Boris is never going to stand up there. Trump is never going to stand up there and say, oh, strengthen your immune system.
Never.
Do
Never.
some stretches. Do some stretches. Keep your blood flowing. Whatever you want to call it, we already have it. We already have the fuel. I'm not saying you are impervious to harm, but you are somewhat protected by your dark leafy greens and vitamin D. I mean, look, that's known to strengthen the lungs.
Yes.
Your best accumulator and way of propagating vitamin D in your system is through your skin, through the sunlight. We talked about cosmic melanin and carbon, and we're already here. We're already here, baby.
Here. Like, we got it. It's just a matter of, like you said, Juice, Black Rockers United wants people to understand, like, the personal is political. So when we make art as Black people, it's already a political thing. And community, mutual aid, like being there for each other, that's always been happening for Black people. And we need to we need to keep that going, because our leadership, like, they're there, but they ain't got each other, we got each other. Like Flora said, we got, you know.
Yo, my mom and her, when I was young, we had a circle of aunts, you know, and I'm sure a lot of people had this. As I got older, I kind of lost it. Some people moved, some people passed away, some people went back home to Caribbean or to the US. But when I was young, there was a whole group of women that raised me, protected me, all of us. There was a whole bunch of kids. Sometimes 4 of us, 4 families are in this house because these women are working their second job.
Yeah.
And these women had to protect each other. Some of the areas that we lived in back in the day, there were like skinheads, and I don't mean the good skinheads that are listening to ska. I mean the bad skinheads that are also listening to ska, but want to keep your head in as well.
Black people.
My mom and all these women, these beautiful, amazing women, carry like milk bottles. They used to deliver milk, but they don't really do it nowadays. And they'd sometimes have a few bottles or things in their purses. And they would walk each other back home if something had happened. And then when everyone didn't used to have a phone, you'd make sure the last person back was the one with the phone, so they can phone someone else and say, yeah, the last person's got home.
Yes.
And if there was things, they'd have to fire these bottles at racist white men. I was raised by them. The real radicals in my life, I didn't grow up around the Black Panthers. I met Panthers later. I didn't grow up around this or the nation of this or the nation of that. I grew up around Black women called Pearline and Charlene and Lurleen and Doreen and Dorothy. You know what I'm saying? Like Dot and the little nicknames for themselves and each other. I grew up around them. And you know what? They weren't rockers. They weren't hip hoppers.
They were.
But they were Afrofuturists, you know?
Yes, they were. That's rock and roll. What they did for each other and how they kept you alive in their community, that is rock, you know? Yeah, that is Black Rockers United 100%. I'm proud of them. Because it's not easy, you know? But like to do it in the face of that, that's what I love so much. Our resilience, you know? And our power. And that, you know, freedom comes when we decide to embrace our Blackness and to say that it's worth protecting. Thank you for saying that, Juice.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Thank you. Like, honestly, this is amazing. Like, this is one of the most transcendental interviews I've ever had. Thank you so much.
Oh, wow. Probably one of the longest as well, right?
I mean, I don't mind, you know?
I always say I talk a lot, but I don't talk too much.
Exactly. You say exactly the right amount. Like, you're blazing a trail through whitewashed everything, Juice. Where are we going, my fellow Afrofuturists? I like your Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe. That was the idea for the book. Yeah, it was my little. Again, it was a thing that I always used to write when I was young. Everything, poetry, little ideas for sketches. In my head, I was going to be doing films. You know, when you know how it is when you're young and you dreamer basically, and people would ask me what I'm going to be, and I'm like, I'm going to be a top footballer, meaning footballer, you know, with the feet. With soccer. No, I totally,
I was going to be a top tennis star. I was going to be a scientist. I was going to be an astronaut. I was going to make comics. And people would always say, well, you're going to do all of those? You're going to do them at the same time? And then I'd be stuck. I'd be like 5 years old, like, I don't know. But I kind of realized, except for the sports stuff, because I hardly do any sports anymore, but I kind of realized I have been a bit of an astronaut and an author and a comic artist and a writer. And I've done some films, I've done some short films and a bit of acting, and I've hosted and I've performed, I've wrote songs, and I've been on TV and I've been on radio. Hey, I've done loads of things that they said I couldn't do. You know, writing the book was one of those things I always used to write. Do you think you're a writer? Do you think you're an author? I don't know. I guess so, I think so. Well, guess what? I am an author. Sure, it's only sold a few hundred copies, but it's a real book and it's got real information in there. Sometimes people come to me now who have just read the book and say, oh, wow, you know, you were talking about Black Panther as Afrofuturism before. There was, oh, wow. Or you were saying about this comic before. Or you were talking about Luke Cage before it came on TV. Oh, wow. And you were connecting that to...
See?
You realize, like, oh, I'm onto something, you know.
You were totally onto something. Afrofutures and Astro Black Travel, the novel that we're talking about, y'all, is incredible. Please go check it out. It is worth the read, and it definitely explores everything that we've been discussing, from the Black diasporic influence on culture and the universe overall, to how to survive as a Black person on this planet and others, right?
Yeah, I mean, I also put it as, like I say, I'm inspired and influenced by a lot of people and a lot of movements. And Rasta was the first thing that really, ooh, okay, so you're saying that person in the Bible was Black. Ah, okay. Let me look at this again. Let me look at that film on ancient Egypt again. And oh, so there are Black people there, but they're carrying people. They're the slaves, they're the servants. But they were there. So they're admitting that they were there. So what were they before they were servants? So, you know, there's certain things, Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Gods and Earths, and what is the meaning of civilization? Civilization is to teach knowledge and wisdom to all the human families of the planet Earth.
All of us here together.
Yeah, so that's the black, the brown, the red, the yellow, the white, you know, and it's part of, the elites know this stuff already. A lot of the elite, not all of them, but a lot of them know this stuff.
I want to see solidarity. Like, that is a demand that I have, like, right now. You know what I mean? Like, survival is dependent on that. And until people get that, then we're going to continue to be, like, separated from the salam that you referenced in your album. Like, the salam is real. The peace is real. It's just, it's maintaining the peace, I think, that we're struggling with, but we're trying to get to that even ground now.
I was taught that peace is the absence of confusion.
Yeah.
And peace, I think people misrepresent and misunderstand peace.
Yeah.
You know, we think peace is going to be this happy ever after, holding hands, la la la. Not always. Sometimes peace is me just knowing you don't come over my side of the garden and I won't come over your side of the garden. Cool, cool. Sometimes it is that. And it's not the best way, but it's real. And there's a form of peace. I think that's what the world, like, as you say, we all need to learn from each other. We all need to coexist. We're all interdependent with each other. And one thing that's been really pushed in recent years, and I say probably the last 60, 70 years, especially through advent of advertising and as consumerism has gone up, is me. Look at me, 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 me. And we're all interdependent, even with people that you don't go over the other side of the road. You still need them to clean the other side of the road for you while you clean your side of the road. Never mind your own family, your own partners, your own lovers, your own children, your own... If you're destroying the tree that's over the road, I breathe from that tree.
The Amazon.
And you breathe from the grass on this side of the road. So we're still interdependent, even if we don't talk. We still have to have a communication. We still have to have an absence of confusion. We still have to have some form of peace, even in our disagreements, even in our, no, I don't get you, I still need to look after the world. I still need to you know, yeah.
Look after each other and look after ourselves, because like self-care, like you can't do it if you're pouring from an empty cup, right? You have to make sure that you are well before you
Mm.
engage. And I think if people do that, then it's possible to like have that absence of confusion and be in a peaceful state of mind, you know? I'm proud of us, Juice.
Bless. It's all good, you know. It's all good. Whose art is that on the back? Whose art am I looking at?
Oh, that's mine.
Ah,
Yeah.
can you zoom in, out, around? Ah.
Yeah. Brianna, George Floyd, Ahmaud, and
Mm.
then Mercy and Tony McDade. And then some mutual aid funds so people can actually help out and, as you said, not be so self-obsessed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's easy to become in this, especially if we're trapped in our own
Yes.
bubble with our mask on, not going outside.
No, like I
And
understand like people becoming isolated and then only being fixated on themselves now. But
yeah,
I also want them to reach out and realize that everyone is in the same boat and that community is empowerment. Honestly, I'm really happy that Black Rockers United can continually host these conscious conversations, because it really does elevate the awareness of everyone, not just us talking, but the entire world, everyone watching. And this has been a timeless talk with you, Juice. Painting parallel nonfictions in your workshops with AfroFlux and your everyday life. You make our world more Black and badass every day. Thank
and
you.
I want to thank all of you guys for reaching out as well, because I didn't even realize how there was more of you, you know, because when I'm on the page on Facebook, I just see people talking about, you know, Jimi Hendrix or Sister Rosetta Tharpe, or, you know, the Black start and parts of rock and roll and how important it is. But I didn't realize there was how much there was an actual movement and a real. See, this is the thing again, like you say, the praxis of the real world drive, you know, beyond the talking points. I mean, I can talk all day, but I will go and do some stuff as well, and that's the reality of it, you know. To live this thing, you know, to be true and living within this, you know. Yeah.
You and Nate Oakley, who founded this in 2006, like you were a lot alike. You decided to go for this vision, even though the space wasn't quite there. You just said, it's going to be there. And you took it, and that's this community now. Nate has Black Rockers United, and you have AfroFlux, and they came together for this brew talk. How cool is that?
It's beyond blessed. It's like it's like I say, I've been looking, and there's people I've seen on the site, and it's Kimani. Uh, is the main person, and it's the same thing. Even this space here that I'm in.
Yes,
This is
even that space.
This is a place that just to show everyone here. If you ever want to do anything here, this is like the AfroFlux home base right now. You know, we got the books. You know, you got to have the books, right? And I was gonna do a bunch of stuff, and then I was, like I say, I was really like, oh, can I still do it? But you have to build it. You have to build it, and then they will come, and that fills with dreams.
Thank you.
No, feel free to reach out anytime, you know, because it's been a joy to talk to you still.
It's been an
Yeah.
absolute delight, Juice. And anytime we will stay AfroFlux, we will stay united and rock on.
Yes, indeed. Peace.